So let's talk a little bit about the after effects. It was about a year ago now that you were basically dealing with the aftermath of the oil spill and the potentially very damaging effects that could have had on Florida travel and Florida tourism. But at the time, it really caused you to enlist the help of social media, getting people out there on the beaches to sort of broadcast that, in fact, they were clean. Walk us through a little bit about that reaction, that initiative, lessons learned, and sort of what you've taken from that experience as you move forward.
Absolutely. It's hard to overestimate the negative impact of the media from the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. I mean, we had 99% of Americans, and really literally people around the world, were watching the live footage of oil being pumped into the Gulf of Mexico. And when you think vacations, you think travel, and you think the Gulf of Mexico, you think Florida. It's by far the most dominant travel product in the marketplace. And it had massive implications. Again, everybody was following the story, but they weren't necessarily as informed as you would expect. Remarkably well-informed, highly educated Americans were totally, had very, very different perceptions of what was actually happening. And it's really scary. You know, 8% of Americans thought there was oil in Jacksonville. Couldn't be further from the actual, from even the Gulf. So people had a lot of misperceptions in the marketplace. Everybody thought that there was oil there. There was actually oil on the beaches throughout the course of last summer. And in fact, we were very, very fortunate as a state to have very, very little environmental impact from the spill. But the economic impact as a result of the misperceptions were tremendous. And rather than trying to control the message, and we hear, you know, an awful lot about, you know, we as brands can no longer control our message, and it's the truth in travel. I mean, the biggest source of travel planning information has always been and will always be the advice of friends and relatives. And so we really started to look at that and say, well, if we're going to be trusted, if we're going to be transparent, let's allow the industry and let's allow the people that are on the ground to show with their own eyes. And that enabled us to kind of push into high gear some social media initiatives that probably would have taken a lot longer to implement in a normal travel planning process or normal marketing planning process. But we started allowing our destinations. It was a hyper-local situation. Again, the Florida Keys were impacted by the negative news, but in a very different way than the people in Pensacola and the people in Fort Walton Beach or the people in St. Petersburg. So everybody had a different story to tell, and we wanted to make sure we enabled that. So we allowed, you know, we used Twitter and social media in kind of a different way. Rather than using it to push out messages, we focused on it as a pulling in content. So we allowed our destination partners to publish what it was that they were seeing on the ground, if it was photos or stories, what was happening, what wasn't happening, and pulled that stuff onto our site. So we created a website literally within 8 days of the activation. It was called Florida Live. Had the Google Maps, and you could see webcams of what the beaches look like from around the state. You could see uploaded photos from the beaches that were happening on a real-time basis that weren't being filtered. You could see all sorts of information that was just being fed into us by people that were on the ground, and that transparency ended up being, you know, one of the strongest things that I think Visit Florida as an organization has ever done, because it did really make us relevant not only to our partners around the state but to travelers around the world. And we found that, you know, when people went and saw with their own eyes and were able to get the real-time information from the ground, real people, real time, real Florida, they were like 38% more likely to actually come and visit. So it actually turned it into a real net positive. And again, beginning February, we were starting to see those results.
So that, I mean, you became quite the content creator, if you will, as a result of that episode. And one of the themes, obviously, of this conference is, you know, marketers becoming content creators and publishers, if you will. Talk a little bit about what, from that experience, you are still doing today as far as creating video, creating content, having people who are writing about travel and tourism in Florida.
Actually, it is a great segue into actually where we are going now. A lot of those elements that were part of our Florida Live response to the oil spill have really become ingrained in the DNA of the organization. And a big piece of that is around content. It's not just creating content and pushing our story out, and we certainly did that. We had a guy on the ground doing videos and blogging and taking photos every single day for like 120 days during the course of the oil spill. But it is about creating content, and we believe very much in the creation of content, but it's also about curating relevant content. So it's not just information that we create, but it's also bringing that information that is valuable to our customers
Sure.
to the forefront. And then the third major piece of that is the distribution of the content and making sure it's not just about, you know, seeing it on my site, or it's about pushing that information out. So we developed widgets, again, literally within weeks of, I knew it could be done. I didn't know how it could be done, but we had a lot of really smart people that helped make that happen. But that same Florida Live content was living on websites around the state, at hotels, at resorts, at associations, and even media sites were playing that, you know, Florida Live content and the, you know, the photos and the content and the live webcams to help, you know, help their readers get a better understanding of what was really happening. So, you know, we feel good about not only Florida and Florida travel and tourism industry, but the fact that people are continuing to travel.